is Jason Belcher, Jason Griffith,
What's up, everybody?
Heather
Louisville
Henry, and Jeff
ProActivist Report
Sebesta.
Live at the
I am
Kentucky
going to
Secretary of
resist the
State
very
Forum.
strong temptation
They're about to get started,
sit
so
up
here we
here
go.
in the seat of power, which looks awesome, but to be fair, so that I can address the candidates directly, I'm going to sit down here today. My name is Bill Shorey. I am the news director at Wave 3 News. What that means is that you don't see me on camera unless something has gone very wrong.
Politics and stuff.
I run the newsroom,
You're
make the editorial decisions, and I get to work with all the folks that you know and love at Wave 3 News, like Don G. and Shannon Kogan and John Bull and Lauren Jones and all those folks. Occasionally they let me out of the house to do events like this, which I appreciate. Our timekeeper this evening will be the president of the Metro Council, David James. I have personally selected President James because he is a trained law enforcement professional, and he will not allow anyone to go over. We will run over the time here. When we get to 30 seconds, he will show you a green card. At 15 seconds, you will get a yellow card. And at 0 seconds, you will get a red card, which means stop, and once again, you do not want to mess with this man by going over that. Thanks everybody for coming out. I want to thank the candidates for participating. We have a 100% turnout tonight for the Democratic primary. I want to thank Teamsters Local 89 and Louisville Democratic Clubs for sponsoring our event tonight. Secretary of State is one of 6 constitutional offices that will be chosen this year. Current Secretary of State Allison Lundergan Grimes is term limited, so we will have a new secretary next year. 8 major party candidates have filed for the office, 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats, and all 4 Democratic candidates are with us tonight, and we will give them the opportunity to introduce themselves in just a moment. Let me lay out the rules and how this is going to work. We will start by giving each candidate a 2-minute opening statement, and we will go in alphabetical order, as I said. Then we will move to a series of questions. These were selected by the members of Louisville Democratic Clubs and by myself. We will also accept questions from the audience. So if you have things that you want to ask, raise your hand. Roz and the Young Democrats will bring those. Around. Or do you guys already have questions? Our Young Democrats here will take the questions and bring those to me. I already have a great one submitted, so we will appreciate those and get as many of those in as we possibly can. As we move to the questions, we'll start with a different candidate each time. We will give everyone the same opportunity and the same amount of time to answer the question. That will vary by question. On some, I will say we're going to do this as a 1-minute question. On some, we will provide 2 minutes. I will make that clear at the beginning. If there is someone personally addresses one of the other candidates, I may, at my discretion, give that person 30 seconds to respond directly, and I may follow up if I feel that the question needs to be explored further. Finally, everyone will have 2 minutes to close. Are we clear on our rules for the forum?
Where do we speak into?
I was told, no, there are microphones in front of you on the table, and you press a button.
Hello?
Hello?
How about that?
Hello? Oh, okay. It doesn't lock down. You have to hold it down.
Yeah, why don't we let you step to the podium? It would be a shame for that awesome podium to not be used, so that's how we will go about it, is step to the podium when we call you. So if we're ready, we'll begin with our opening statements. So, Mr. Belcher, please give us your opening statement, and this is 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, comm check. I'm an old Air Force officer. We have simple rules when it comes to speaking into a microphone, whether it's in a room or radio. Think before you key that mic. That is the rule, because once you put it out there, you cannot take it back. So thank you all very much for the invitation. It's great to be here. I actually think this is a great birthday present for me. Today's actually my birthday.
Happy birthday.
So, yeah, I got a call at outstanding. I'm already ahead of exceeding expectations. But it's great to be able to participate in a forum like this. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I respect your time as a candidate, and I will respect your time as Secretary of State if I'm elected. So the reason that I'm in this race is I want to help improve the civic health of Kentucky. Well, in some of our measures, we're falling pretty short. We have low voter turnout, low civic participation, and I would like to improve that. And what I will bring with me to help accomplish that task are 20 years of leadership experience, 10 in the United States Air Force. I'm proud of my military service. I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to gain command experience, but I'm not a one-trick pony. I have business experience too in project management leadership in the business sector, so I'll bring that with me. I will work every single day to deliver quality service to the people of Kentucky, and by that I mean every person that comes to the Secretary of State's office with a question or a request, I want to make sure that you get that answer to your satisfaction. Not my satisfaction, not the staff's satisfaction, your satisfaction, because your satisfaction is the one that matters. And finally, I would bring innovative thinking, not just with electronic voting, but also tackling problems by thinking outside the box a little bit. And when I say innovative, I do not mean pie in the sky. I mean two things, changes that are beneficial and achievable. So if you like experienced leadership, quality service, and innovative thinking, I hope you'll consider giving me your vote on May 21st. Thank you very much. Look forward to your questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And our next candidate is Jason Griffin.
Wow, this is a lot bigger than I thought. I want to thank the Mose Green Democrats as well as the Floyd Fort Democrats for having me tonight and all the other candidates. My name is Jason Griffith and I'm from Whitesburg in Letcher County. As a concerned citizen, proud union member, 25-year teacher, and small business owners, I spent the last 3 years appalled by and standing with in opposition to the things that have been happening in Frankfurt. I was there when prevailing wage was lost. I was there when right to work was implemented. I was there at every state rally that I could think of for teachers and for retirees and their health care laws. It was at that time I made a conscious decision to run for Secretary of State. I believe we have to do everything in our power to protect the rights to vote of every citizen in our Commonwealth, and I believe that every single vote matters. If you watch what happened in Western Kentucky this year, Jim Conn won his race by 1 vote. And I firmly believe that we need to protect each one of those. I know we need to modernize our system and move it into the 21st century, and we need to protect the database of information of our people. We must prioritize our homegrown businesses and make sure that they have a leg up in the economy and so that they can advance and make our economy stronger. I understand the great honor and privilege bestowed on the Office of Secretary of State in protecting historical documents and have concrete plans in place, each one of these steps, and the personal knowledge and expertise to implement them. I'm proud to have earned numerous endorsements from mayors, county judges, clerks, circuit clerks, PBAs, magistrate, my own state representative, and I have taken the lead in releasing not only my 2017, but my 2018 taxes. I'm proud to say that I have not accepted any, nor will I accept any PAC money. I'm here to humbly and sincerely, respectfully ask for your vote on May 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Heather Virginia.
Well, it is great to be here tonight in Louisville. I'm proud to have been endorsed by the Teamsters. I'm glad to be here in your wonderful facility. We had a wonderful breakfast the other morning with your retirees. We had so many wonderful stories to share, and I appreciate all of their hard work in our community. I've been the last 20 years, been a local, state, and national advocate for our military heroes. Many of you know my story. You know I'm a daughter of a disabled Vietnam veteran. I have chosen to fight for the rest of my life for increased housing, health care, and benefits for our nation's heroes. It's vitally important to me. As I said earlier today when I was speaking to the UAW retirees, that's actually a title that never turns out. No matter what title you have going through in life, to be the daughter of a veteran is a very special title, certainly, and it's one that carries forward. Military families are entirely important in our Kentucky's population. They're about 8% of our population, with 24,000 of them being our women veterans. And so I have been proud to serve that population for 20 years. In 2014, Governor Steve Beshear thought so much, showed all of my work throughout the nation, that he asked me to come and lead the Kentucky Department of Veterans Affairs. And leading A large statewide department comes with it several responsibilities. It's the administrative responsibilities for overseeing 4 veterans nursing homes, 5 state veteran cemeteries. You know, by the time I left, we had 910 employees. We handled a $102 million budget. I was a legislative liaison for that department. And so for nearly 5 years under 2 different administrations, I was able to navigate the process and build credible leadership on both sides of the aisle. And I promise you, as Secretary of State, I'll be able to do the same. It's really important that we step into that role, and in November, we create a seamless transition into that office, because we'll not only go into a presidential election cycle for our primary and our general election, but you'll have to absorb a 2020 budget that's already been laid before you. And for all the programs and services and cyber upgrade that needs to happen, having someone there who knows how to navigate that system efficiently and effectively is vitally important. So thank you all so much. I appreciate your vote on May 21st.
Thank you very much. And our last candidate is Jeff Sebesta.
Hey y'all, my name is Jeff Sebesta. I'm your next Secretary of State. I'm running specifically to advocate for the expansion of the franchise to felons, to return to felons their right to vote and their right to be part of our society. I'm also, one of the main reasons I'm running is transparency. When I am in office, I will refuse all privileged communication. I will refuse all private communication. Everything that moves through my office will be published immediately to the internet. You will get to read everything that passes through the office of the Secretary of State. It's because the Secretary of State is in charge of facilitating communication between the people, the legislature, and the governor's office. We own the government. The government is ours. The government must be honest with us. I believe that all politicians should make a promise like this. I think anybody can. I'm just saying I'm going to do it. Now, the reason that this is interesting specifically to the Secretary of State comes from the Kentucky Constitution. The provision that sets up the Governor's Journal is the Kentucky Constitution, Section 91, which states the Secretary of State will keep a fair register and attest to all official acts of the government. All official acts means everything in office. Fair register means you can read it. This means that on my first day, I'm going to walk into the governor's office and I'm going to publish everything I possibly can. There will be no more secret deals. There will be no more mysterious missing shareholders. I'm not here to lay blames or to cast aspersions, but I'm here to say that it's over. We're moving into the future. The future is transparent. The government and the people will know each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the candidates. We're going to get started with questions now. We'll begin with a 1-minute question. Since all of you are currently candidates in a Democratic primary, I want to give you 1 minute to each answer the question, why are you running as a Democrat? Why do you consider yourself a Democrat? And why have you chosen to run as a Democrat at this time? How can you win in a state that has recently been more red? Let's go in the same order and start with Mr. Belcher.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure this thing's on the green light is going off. So you're starting on time. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I come from Pike County. That's where I grew up. So one of the reasons why I'm a Democrat is it's been a lifelong identity for me. My grandfather was a coal miner and a pro-union Democrat for 30 years. So I grew up in that culture. And as I came of age, I was raised in ideals that the Democratic Party stands for. I particularly believe the government has no business telling adults who they should marry or how they should live their private lives. And as far as winning in the red state goes, I live in Eastern Kentucky, one of the reddest parts of the red state, and I have folks who proudly wear their MAGA hats on my volunteer staff, so I believe I can do that. Thank you.
Mr. Griffith.
Hope we're doing that right. Thank you. I'm a Democrat because I believe that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Across the country, and we've seen particularly here in Kentucky, this has particularly been the case, that the top 1% are overprotected and over-prioritized over the 99%. I grew up a Jimmy Carter Democrat because I felt that the common person could raise to great heights. But let me tell you something too. I live in Eastern Kentucky, right on the Virginia border, and I have reached out to people in my area in very deeply red states, Leslie County with an 82% Republican voter registration. Their mayor has endorsed me. And my goal from the very beginning of this campaign was different. I went with a general election strategy because because that is where we need to move the votes. We saw it with Indian Grass campaign, we saw it with Jim Gray's campaign, we see it in every race. We have to do that. So when I say that I've attended my 137th event and only maybe 25 of them been in Louisville, it's not because I don't love you all, but I'm doing my best to get the vote of every single Kentuckian. And I hope you'll join me or the other candidates for office as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Henry.
Well, I chose to be a Democrat because of social service. And in fact, in 2000, I actually switched my party affiliation from Republican to Democrat because I believe so heavily in work with homelessness. And it was then in the Clinton administration that they proved to me that they cared deeply about the everyday life of the citizen and also believe strongly in taking care of our environment. Steve and I have been long supporters of saving land and through conservation and agriculture, say 6,000 acres in this area to protect foliage forest because it's vitally important for the progression of our area, certainly. I also believe in health care and patient information, and I believe the Democratic Party cares more about that than the Republican Party does. I want to make sure that every single one of us have the right to health care and quality health care at that. So those are the reasons I'm a Democrat. I do believe I appeal, though, to both sides of the aisle because of my affiliation with our military and our veterans. I believe that each one of us carry with us our own ability to cross those aisles, certainly those from Eastern Kentucky, those from Lexington, certainly. And I think that I could appeal to both sides and bring out those switch voters in the general election.
Thank you, Mr. Stubbs.
Well, can you hear me if I don't press the button?
Probably not.
Got to press the button. So, my path to being a Democrat before you today is a little bit more complicated. Although I was raised a Carter Democrat, I have a lot of very serious problems with the party after 2016, and I did leave, and nobody noticed, so I came back. I'm a very serious activist. I'm very serious about getting things done. I judge everything that I do politically by its effectiveness, and I believe that Democrats and running as a Democrat in a close primary state is by far the most effective way, and I like y'all. We get along. How I'm going to win in a red state is this is a nonpartisan office. Once we win, it's a nonpartisan office. I will run in a nonpartisan and fair way. I think that's one of the reasons why I've been doing so well with groups outside of the Democratic strongholds, like the Libertarians and the freaking Tea Party. I get along with the Tea Party. It's amazing. So that's how I'm going to do it. Fairness and honesty and decency. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all. You guys are good remaining seated and just using the button. Is everybody okay with that? Just want to make sure we're all kind of on equal footing.
If anybody gets real riled up,
There you go. And once again, it would be a shame not to use that podium. All right, now we've got everybody good and warmed up. Let's get right into it. I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to address what may be the hottest issues surrounding this office and this race. The recent story from ProPublica and the Lexington Herald Leader claimed that current Secretary of State Allison Lonergan Grimes had misused the state's voter database. In response, the legislature passed and the governor signed a bill limiting the office's power in this area. My question is 2 parts. A, was this a proper response or just opportunism? And B, would you fight to restore the powers that have been limited, and how? We're going to start with Mr. Griffith, 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. I do believe it was a power grab, an opportunist move, a knee-jerk reaction by a senator who didn't get his way. Let me just say that the original Constitution, the original 3 constitutions did not provide for the election of a Secretary of State. So I think moving what they did takes less power, it takes more power away from the Secretary of State, puts it in the hands of the governor. Senate Bill 34 prohibits the Secretary of State now from accessing voter rolls, and it also removes the Secretary of State as the chair of State Board of Elections. I've worked with key persons in the Senate and House, and if you looked at the bill, how it was passed, there was a Republican that voted against it. Buford voted against it, but I'd also reach out to Morgan McGarvey, Senator McGarvey, and Senator Thomas as well too, in conjunction with previous Secretaries of State to build a coalition to help restore those rights. Now, let me just say that previous Secretaries of State have come out against that particular bill, as well as Mary Lou Helm, who is as nonpartisan as anybody you're going to find in Frankfurt. So the dispensation of the duties of the Secretary of State are nonpartisan, And I believe in that firm commitment, and I think that that trust can be gained again. And I've worked very closely with those folks that I just mentioned to make that happen in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Hendry.
So as one who has been a legislative liaison for a department, you know, we saw this coming because it was a pre-filed bill, certainly. And I do understand sometimes the contentiousness between legislators and certain people who hold office. And I do believe that this was an emotional charge, certainly against Allison. However, sometimes you have to enter into a playing field as it is. And I know that there are moves right now to possibly overturn that, to write charges that it was unconstitutional. I'm not exactly sure how successful that will be. So whichever one of us get in there, we may very well have to navigate the process as it is now. So I think that it is ultra important that when you get into office, learning how to navigate, and that's what I've been able to do through 2 different administrations, both Democrat and Republican, is to learn how to navigate those nuances. And so going in, knowing that you're an ex officio non-voting board member now of the State Board of Elections, you'll still be able to provide information, valuable information. So I think being able to be a credible person that brings good information, knowing that it's nonpartisan, being listened to, and then also the system itself may have its own problems. And so understanding how the legislature works, from time to time, it's much easier to amend or reverse things when they see problems arise. So we're going to go through a set of elections, right? Our primary and our general election, possibly under this new system, which will then show, hopefully, both sides of the party why this needs to be reconsidered within the next legislative session. And then there are little bits that possibly we can do little bits at a time. Sometimes broad stroke corrections are a little tough in the legislature. And so one of the things I would try to do immediately would at least get the Secretary of State as a voting member on that board, because really the Secretary of State is the fiscal foot soldier who gets all of the federal grants for the county clerks, for the voting machines and the e-polls as well. And so I think at least what you could do is provide that office a voting member, which would uneven, because now it's 4-4 and they need a tiebreaker.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvester.
I would echo some of my colleagues here in that I do feel that the bill was somewhat passed in a rush and for slightly poor reasons. I feel it was slightly badly written, and absolutely one of my main plans is to beg Ms. Helm to stick around and help us get things running right again. But it is the legislature's prerogative, and it is the legislature's right to make these decisions, and I will work under the conditions that they set. I thought very deeply about some of the provisions of the bill, especially some things that you said during KT, and I do see that the legislature should revisit this decision and write it a little bit more cautiously and observe the process a little better. From my own personal point of view, because of my transparency provisions there, and hopefully everyone else's eventually too, there are specific things about the bill that affect it differently. For example, ProPublica and Western Herald Leader and the Imperial Journal, they ain't gonna have to sue nobody under the Open Records Act under me. I'll go down and get the information myself, and I don't care if it's investigating me. Whatever they want to know, they're gonna find it instantly. That's not gonna be a problem. Also, because I am proposing transparent citizen control of an important office that our state's economic livelihood depends upon, there's really nothing wrong with these provisions saying, hey, you know, certain types of specific technical information should not find its way to the top. I found it somewhat visible that people were saying she was looking up Rocky Atkins' voter registration. He's a Democrat. It's really easy. She knows him. It's not an issue. But when I'm in office, I am actually not against there being a legislative backup that says, I won't be giving away people's voter registration information. I won't be giving away sensitive business information. There's really not a problem with their gap there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I am going to ask, I appreciate the enthusiasm for everyone. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Belcher, sorry.
One of the great things about the United States of America is we are a laboratory of democracy. And when I say laboratory of democracy, I mean we have 50 states, all of whom try different policies and pass different laws. And what we can learn from that is we can watch and see which laws and policies work out pretty well, and we can emulate those if we choose to. Or we can watch and see which ones don't work out very well, and we can avoid those mistakes. If you if the state legislature had been doing that already, they would not have passed the bill to change the Secretary of State's duties, because it's quite apparent from the data that states that have a chief election official that oversee elections tend to have better scores in terms of perception of legitimacy, and they have fewer problems with ballot tampering and voter corruption. So I think it's in the state's interest to change that back. Now, part two, as Secretary of State, I would advocate for that. The only way it's going to happen is if the legislature in the future changes it. I don't think we're going to have much luck with the court challenge. But I would say that this is an issue of prioritization as a leader and as an organization leader. The question you have to ask yourself is, how much time and resources do you really want to devote to this when you can't have a direct impact on it in the first place? I would say I would advocate for it. I would hope the future legislatures will change it because that's in Kentucky's best interest. But that can't happen until another legislature comes in, so it's not going to be in my top 10 priority list as Secretary of State. There are other more important, more pressing issues that the Secretary of State should be focused on. And those are the ones that I'm going to put at the top of my priority list as Secretary of State. Thanks.
Thank you, sir, and I apologize for cutting you off there. Yeah, I do appreciate the enthusiasm from everyone, but I will ask everyone to hold your applause out of respect for the next candidate to speak. I'm going to follow up to that question. We're going to start with Ms. Henry. You all talked about you responded to my questions about the controversy itself, but to follow up on that, however the rules are laid out going forward, you're going to have a lot of access to various citizen data. What would you do, and I'll give you each 1 minute to answer, what would you do to make sure that none of that citizen data is misused? Ms. Henry.
Well, first off, having handled sensitive data before in our office, you limit the personnel that has access to that sensitive data. And from my understanding, the staff that had access to that had a read-only access, which means that was even more limited information and not as broad as what it could have been. I think that also it is interesting that people can call from the public into the office and they expect the staff to look that information up for them when there is a portal online that you actually can look up voter registration yourself. And if they call the office, they should have to fill out a request so that our personnel are actually protected as well, that they were requested to look that up. But I would encourage the public, you too have the access to that information on an online portal, and I would really rather the public do that themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer?
Well, the security is always a tension between convenience and safety. The only truly safe system is one that's not plugged into the internet. So as a state, we need to have a conversation about what kind of information we want on a separate system that either has to be accessed by mail or driven to. And we can't put sensitive things on a safe system at no particular cost to anyone, and it will be perfectly safe. But you have to drive to Frankfurt to use it because it can't be on the internet. So if you want to have things that are incredibly safe, we can do it, but it's inconvenient. And we need to figure out where that line is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
My first job, my first additional duty rather in the United States Air Force as a first lieutenant was a security manager for a flying squadron. And I was specifically trained to safeguard and handle classified information at both secret and top secret level. So I understand protecting data. Here's how you do it. There's 2 steps. The first step is compliance. Are we fully compliant with all applicable laws that govern the handling of this information? And are we using industry standard technology to secure it? And step 2 is a leadership function and a communication function. We got a saying in the Air Force, bad news does not get better with age. It's not a vintage wine. If you see something that's wrong or you discover a problem, communicate that problem to your supervisor, their supervisor, or me, and we will work together to find a solution. Because security is a dynamic environment. Every day bad guys discover new weaknesses in their system, and we have to adjust to that. The only way that's going to happen is we communicate with each other, work together as a team, and solve the problems that we discover. Thanks.
Mr. Griffith?
Thank you. I continue the coordination of the State Board of Elections has had with Cyberscout and International League on Cybersecurity, would make sure that regular internal security audits are performed to see if systems need updated and patched to improve security level recommendations. We also need to see if there's a process in place to remove voters who are no longer require access if they've moved, if they're deceased. I believe that automatic voter registration probably can help with that part of it. We also need to ensure that there are safeguards in place to prevent data from being copied to USB drives and DVDs. We need to integrate protocols that prohibit personally identifiable information from being taken off-site. I would expect there are probably already a robust intrusion detection system probably already in place with that, and we will continue to monitor for potential attacks. Lastly, I'll work with the Department of Homeland Security to ensure that our county clerks are getting the training that they need in the critical threat situation and analysis, and hopefully we'll work with them adopting all recommendations given to my office.
You addressed my next question, but I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to address a very specific kind of security. We hear a lot about voter fraud, which is certainly more rare than some people might have us to believe, but there are documented instances of it, even in Kentucky. How will you protect the integrity of Kentucky's elections, and does the federal government have a role in that? We're going to begin with Mr. Sylvester. 2 minutes.
Well, absolutely voter fraud exists, and absolutely it's not really that big of a deal. Anyone who's been working on elections knows for a while that you can't steal an election using you can't steal a 21st century election with 19th century methods. It's like trying to shoplift your way to the military. There's just no way forward. So the real issue to me is proving to people that our voting systems are already, at least mostly and robustly secure. This means getting the grants to help the county clerks continue to roll out optically scanned paper ballots, because paper to people symbolizes trustworthiness. It symbolizes reproducibility. I'm also a big fan of something called paper blockchain, which is exactly what it sounds like and also would take an hour to explain. But it's a very simple system that would allow visual rechecking of voting results. The most important thing in this case is to make people understand that their vote is secure. How you do that is you're responsive to concerns. If there are serious concerns with an election, there is nothing in the world wrong with a recount or a revote. This is not an expensive process. It makes people feel that their voice has been heard. It makes people feel involved and engaged in their democracy. I feel that this is fundamental, and that when we're dealing with voting issues, even the appearance of impropriety must be avoided. Even the appearance that something might be wrong must be avoided. And so I would absolutely support exit polls. I would absolutely support automatic recounts or automatic revotes if the exit polls are too far off. I guess I can't say much more without repeating myself, so thank you very much.
Mr. Belcher.
Confidence in elections and in the voting process is the foundation of legitimacy of our government. That has to be protected, and it has to be secured from actual threats and from imagined threats, and they both play a role in the world we live in. Securing the voting process is a training function. Every official that's involved in the process, whether it's at the county level or in Frankfurt, has to be properly trained to do their jobs and made aware of the correct procedures that have to be followed for handling votes and the process of ballots. It's just like our security and our maintenance process in the Air Force. You follow those tech orders and you follow the letter of the law exactly when you're doing that process. Because if you don't, the result will be pretty dire. So training is the number one issue. On the disinformation and misinformation, I would like to say there absolutely is a role for the federal government, because we live in a world where foreign governments and foreign military services specifically have already probed and are continuing to target and probe our IT infrastructure. So keeping that secure is a function that they provide, specifically the Department of Homeland Security. They will provide information to the states, and they do this on a regular basis. And we have to know how to handle that information and get it to the correct people so that we can act on it. That any new vulnerabilities that are discovered or any new threats that are uncovered can be addressed in a timely fashion, and that people in the state know that that loop has been closed and that their voting process is as secure as we can make it technologically and financially. Thanks.
Mr. Griffin.
When we talk about election integrity, we're talking about really two critical aspects of voting. First, making sure that every vote is counted properly and documented. Number two, making sure that fraud, tampering, electioneering, and those charges are stopped and have no effect on the outcome of an election. To ensure these items, I'd like to earn the trust of the State Board of Elections, and I would like to promote the ongoing training of staff through professional development and working in conjunction with the Federal Election Assistance Commission Standard Board. We also need to have timely audits of our voting machines in order to prevent potential attacks. County clerks and staff will undergo trainings to help ensure the most up-to-date procedures, distribution, handling of machines and ballots, and documentation of that data. In addition, I will be at the front of fraud allegations before these claims are made. The Secretary of State's website and social media pages can play a critical role in educating the electorate about voter fraud, and there are many forms of it. In addition, election rules and the delineation of what things like electioneering are, what tampering are, what is fraud, can be shared on social media with people, and it's very, very effective. And I will publicly always put that fraud number out there. It's now called the election violation hotline. It's 1-800-328-VOTE. As a follow-up, I'll coordinate with the Attorney General, who is also required by statute to conduct post-election audits in 6 randomly drawn counties within 20 days of the election, and the results of those audits will be used to strengthen our future elections and work against potential threats.
Thank you, Ms. Henry.
Yes, well, right now, we have got some provisions that are starting to be put in place. We have about 29 counties that are currently use the old direct electronic machines, which don't provide your paper trail, and those are in the process of being transitioned over. Until all 120 counties have machines that are up to date in software and up to date in their mechanisms to provide that paper trail, you can't do a proper audit after the elections. So that's vitally important that we get the funding totally to be able to transition those machines. And through some of the HAVA money, which is the Help America Vote Act, we were able to get some of those funds to start that process. It's not all there, certainly, as we know with government. Sometimes it all doesn't come in one package, so it's going to be up to the next Secretary of State to go out and seek more funding to be able to facilitate that entire process. There are 2 personnel that I'd like to see come on board, which the State Board of Elections has planned to do but has not implemented yet, and that is a Chief Information Security Officer whose entire responsibility will be securing the voter registration database, internal office software and hardware, election software, and helping to train all 120 county clerks and county board of elections. This is not an office staff who's going to have other duties as assigned. That particular staffer should be one whose everyday duties, night and day, should be to make sure that they are overseeing the cybersecurity of all of our voter rolls, our registration, and any internal and external software that houses sensitive data. And then a security architect consultant. The SB is actually supposed to start doing this already. Someone who can update the version of the voter registration system with additional cybersecurity tools. And then, of course, housing sensitive data. We all know who work in government that there are certain protocols and provisions that need to be put in place. And currently, they're undergoing an assessment with Department of Homeland Security to recognize any deficiencies within the process of how that is housed, how that is stored. And once those deficiencies are defined, then you start the plan, a strategic plan, to make sure that safety is put in place.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about helping America vote, or more specifically, helping Kentucky vote. Our current governor was elected by roughly 15% of the registered voters in the state. What can you do to encourage voter participation? Part of working in the television business is lived in a lot of places. I've voted in a lot of states, and I've seen a lot of different procedures implemented to enhance voter participation. How will you go about that? Do you support initiatives like same-day registration, early voting, convenience voting? And we're going to begin with Mr. Belchin. 2 minutes.
Thank you. To go back to my original opening statement, that is my top priority as Secretary of State, would be is improving that participation and voter turnout. As far as the initiatives go that can improve that, I support all of them. And in particular, I support automatic voter registration, early voting. I would also like us to consider as ways to move the needle a little bit more and increase participation in electronic voting. The state of West Virginia already has a voting app that allows their military members to vote from abroad and safe and secure. I would love to have had that when I was deployed to Iraq. I did not, so we missed out on the midterm election when I was there. I think that the process of overcoming the challenges that we need to get to is a way to bring people in the state together to work towards a common challenge, or overcoming a common challenge, and we can do that. I would also say that when it comes to the voting age, I've been asked if I support lowering it to 16. I'm not ready for that. But I would say I would support the discussion and consider lowering it to 17, and here's why. Because that's a senior in high school. So instead of giving folks who are senior in high school a civics test, give them a civic voice and let them vote. That should be part of your transition from what we call the academic environment into the quote real world. I think that would increase enthusiasm amongst that demographic, and that is the largest demographic that we have in the state. So it's our job, it's the job of the Secretary of State to be the Commonwealth's chief advocate for civic engagement. And every chance I get, everywhere I go in the state, I would advocate those things. You should know that in order for those changes to happen, we need legislative approval. not by edict or dictate that we bring about those changes. So we have to work with the legislators to get them on board to make those changes happen. And I will work every day, every single day that I'm in that office to do that and to make those things happen. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Griffith.
Thank you. Try that again. I've actually been at the forefront advocating for automatic voter registration. There are currently 18 states that have a measure of that in effect with their electoral system. And I believe it's important because, one, it allows more people to vote. Two, it has a larger aggregate data of people that actually do vote. Three, it cleans up our voting roster because if you do not renew your driver's license or state ID, it's because you're either incarcerated, you moved out of the state, or you unfortunately passed away. And also it helps remove any idea from making this a partisan office, because there is one party right now that's trying to make this a partisan office by saying that there are illegal voters and undocumented citizens that are voting. A person who's in that category cannot vote in Kentucky because they don't have a state ID. All right, so having automatic voter registration helps accurately enforce what we have, but it also allows more people to vote. But I'd also like to say that it helps our 18 to 25-year-old population the most. Our 18 to 25-year-olds don't vote, not because they don't care, it's because they live in a different area when they are where they originally registered to vote. So if you have automatic voter registration in place, when you're 22 and you've moved to college, you can vote somewhere else, because when you renew your license, your registration of your precinct moves with you. But most importantly, I've been advocating for a civics commendation from the Secretary of State's office, a civics citation. We do this for adults, called the Civics Leadership Award, and the Secretary of State gives it out to adults. But I think we can extend that to 16 and 17-year-olds who put in 2 years of work with the county clerk and helping register people to vote and helping on election day, because I believe that young kids who are engaged young will do it later. And I think that's the kind of forward think we need to make sure that our young adults understand. Giving the kids a test, making them take a class, doesn't work. I know, I'm a school teacher, and we need to get our kids involved young. Thanks.
Ms. Andrews.
Well, certainly there are a lot of discussion up here about early voting, automatic registration, restoration of voting rights, and all of those are great. But we do have to first have a conversation with our county clerks. Those are the one set of people that felt like they had not been brought to the table, which led to the Senate Bill 34 and the House Bill 114 and all of that passing. And our county clerks, we need to understand what difficulties they have with boots on the ground with any of these processes moving forward. Like, what does early voting do to them? In some counties, it may be easier than others. And then when we talk about automatic restoration of voting rights, we talk about 312,000 of our Kentuckians that don't earn that right to vote back. And nonviolent offenders, I believe we have to have a very serious discussion, and not only for them, but the unintended consequences of not giving them the right to vote. What are we doing to the future generations of children and family members and their family? Are we then creating obstacles for future generations to vote? And we need to have a very serious discussion about that. There's a disproportionate amount of African Americans that affects, and I think for the future of voting and for future generations, it's extremely important. Now, there are a couple of items that they do in the Secretary of State's office, which I do think that encourages younger people to vote, and that's the George Davis Powers Award, certainly the first African American state senator. And I think that award is awesome, and they give awards to high schools who they could be a gold award, a silver award, a bronze award. The gold award means that 100% of eligible seniors are registered to vote. And why that's important is because, you know what, my eldest daughter, Harper, she was 17, a senior. She'll be 18 before the general election. She was able to register to vote after I filed, so I'll be on her very first ballot for her very first election. But you know what? No one else could really talk to her about registering to vote. So when we talk about these cost-neutral ways and incentives to get schools into the game of getting their seniors and their children within their schools educated and registered to vote, that's one incentive that now exists that I would like to see expanded.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sebesta.
Well, I would echo my colleagues. I believe that the proposals they put forward are all excellent. I would add one thing, which is that this is really two questions. As a candidate, we have a different responsibility here than we will as secretary. The candidate is who drives turnout. Our job is to get up here right now and get you all to show up and say true things that are interesting and get you all to go out and get more people to vote. That's what the candidate does. The Secretary of State is the person who makes it possible for as many people to vote as possible. And I would cheerfully advocate for all the ideas you've heard. I will reiterate that the restoration of voting rights to felons outweighs these things in magnitude enormously. If there's one thing I've learned during this campaign, is that this is a much more serious issue than even I thought, and I was very aware of it before. And in fact, I think I'm gonna use my closing statements to talk about what happened in Shelbyville yesterday. But, so, I think everybody's got great ideas, and I think as long as we keep standing up here and keep giving you great ideas, it's gonna make you wanna vote, and that's gonna drive up turnout.
All right, I want to encourage everyone once again to, if you have questions, raise your hand, and our young Democrats will come around and give you a slip of paper and turn it in. I do have one that has been submitted here, and I'm going to combine it with one of my own. So the question from the audience is, what is the cost of a statewide election? And I would follow that up with, what is that done as efficiently as possible? Is there anything that can be done to conduct elections more efficiently? And is part of that realigning Kentucky's constitutional officer elections to align with congressional and legislative races in even years? And after that 3-minute question, I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer. Mr. Griffith, we'll start with you.
Something like that, I would probably be called on that first. All right, the cost of the elections are far greater than not having the election whatsoever and not getting people to turn out. The greater question is, how do we reduce the cost that we have? And you also mentioned a particular, you gave reference to a bill that was actually presented this year. It didn't pass, but there was actually a bill that would allow the constitutional offices to happen at the same time as presidential elections. There was great concern over that because people felt that people could ride the coattails of the president down. I do agree that that is definitely a measure to reduce the cost, because you're talking about an entire election that doesn't happen in the course of a given year. But I believe at some point, if we can verify what our voter rolls are through a system of automatic voter registration that constantly claims that at some point, maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, we can move to a paper ballot system that makes it much cheaper on the election process. But first, we have to ensure that all of our voter data is correct. Before we do that, we're going to end up like North Carolina was this last year with 3 pages.
Thank you, Ms. Henry.
Nice basketball too, I will say that. You know, that's a wealth of questions that you have rolled in there to one, and I will just honestly say, I'm not exactly sure what the overall cost of the election is. I know that for each county that cost varies significantly, from larger counties to smaller counties. I do think that our county clerks, like every county, what David James has presented before you for, are broke. And I think any way that the Secretary of State can help, again, be that fiscal foot soldier to help offset or subsidize, whether you're going to present an ABR to the General Assembly for the budget session to be able to get in some extra dollars, all they can do is say no, folks. And I've been told no a lot when I've presented those. And then there's also mechanisms with federal grants, with the HAVA grant, and joining the National Association of Secretary of States. They all advocate for additional monies to come from federal government to be able to offset some of that cost for the county clerks. And they have to be, they're vitally important. Those e-poll books, which I know here in Jefferson County, a lot of us still sign those registration books when we go in. That costs a ton of money to scan and turn in. And so by 2020, we're hoping that 100% of the county clerks or the polling locations when you go in will be e-poll, and that will significantly reduce costs.
Mr. Sebesta.
Well, actually, I was very much looking forward to a question of this nature. I can tell you with all honesty, I don't know. And actually, I believe Mr. Belcher and I were talking about it, and we asked each other, how much does an election cost in Kentucky? And we looked at each other and said, I don't know. And we tried to figure it out, and we haven't quite figured it out yet. So I'm actually looking forward to finding out the answer too. I will say this. This is something I've thought about a lot. I don't believe it's very much. I believe that it's very much worth it. I believe that as a matter of principle, when I enter the office, for the comfort of our libertarian friends, I will take the budget of this office as the upper limit. And I will do everything to bring in the office under budget every year. Because as you heard, we are cash strapped. We don't need to be spending more money on elections right now. So I have a lot of ideas, I have a lot of things that I want to do, but I'm telling you, I will remain within that budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
I would like to applaud the other candidates for their honesty and join them in saying that I don't know what the dollar figure is. I'd be happy to look it up, research is something that's important for us to do. I would say that aligning our state election with the national election is an absolutely itself will increase voter turnout. I don't know how much, but I would think 10 to 15% of that alone would be a good way. How do we decrease costs? Here's some information on electronic voting. The cost of an e-vote is 50% to the state of the cost of a paper ballot. So if you want to reduce costs, electronic voting is the way to do it. Thanks.
Can I have just one thing very briefly?
Sure.
I absolutely love that this is an off-year election. I think Kentucky has the most fascinating politics in America right now. This is great. I'm having a wonderful time. I think we should keep doing this. Thank you.
All right, well, since Mr. Sebesta took just an extra minute there, I'm going to do something with the next question. You have addressed this issue a couple of times, so I think we know where you stand on it, but I want to give everybody else 1 minute to be clear on where you stand on restoration of voting rights for felons and which felons. So we will start with Ms. Henry on this one.
I think that the restoration of voting rights is something that seriously has to be considered, and we have to have serious discussions about this. When you talk about, especially nonviolent offenders, I think we have to have exceptions for those that are convicted of murder, sex crime, or bribery in election, and that was legislation that certainly was proposed. But if we as a society believe wholeheartedly in the successful rehabilitation and reintegration of justice-involved persons back into society, we have to seriously consider some cost-neutral, positive incentives to get them engaged in society. And that is yet one way we can help reduce recidivism. So I am all for that discussion for restoration of voting rights.
Great, Mr. Belcher?
I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, and that oath is for life, even though I'm no longer an active duty. The Constitution says, no state shall deny or abridge citizens of the United States the right to vote based on race, color, or, here's the kicker, previous condition of servitude. In other amendments, incarceration is defined as a condition of servitude. So here's my point. If you're still in jail, you don't have a previous condition of servitude, you have a current condition of servitude. It doesn't apply. But once your sentence is completed, per the Constitution, you're entitled to vote. I don't particularly like the idea of folks that have committed violent offenses getting to vote, but that's what the Constitution says. And until it's changed, that's what I'll support.
And Mr. Griffith?
Thank you, I keep forgetting to hit the button. This is the very first thing that went on my website, and it was the thing that I have promoted the most. I've been to House committee meetings about it. I've talked to Representative Booker about it. I've talked to Representative Brown about it. I went to Kentucky Institute of Commonwealth meetings about this particular thing. They got a plan in place to do this. I believe that anybody who's paid their debt to society should have it automatically restored. I think that is without question. It still boggles my mind that we would do this. In fact, when I went to the Kentucky Institute of Commonwealth meeting, they said, why is it we do this? And the common answer was, well, I guess we've always done this. We've always taken the right to vote away. Without any real, why would we do this? Why don't we take their belly button away? Sort of mentality. So I believe that I've campaigned on this since day one. I believe that you've paid your debt to society. You've been redeemed in the eyes of the law. The parole board is a much better determination whether that person should have the right to vote back, not a politician. So I'm going to fiercely advocate for that. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. We are going to move on to other duties of the Secretary of State's office here eventually, but before we do that, I did get a couple of questions from the audience about additional potential changes in voting. So I want to give everybody 1 minute to respond to this, and we'll start with Mr. Sebesta. Both of these deal with extending voting hours to later in the day, as well as making Election Day a state holiday. Do you favor those? What would the impact be, Mr. Sebesta? 1 minute.
Absolutely, I favor those. I believe both of those are on my website. The effect of those would be more people voting. I was just down in Texas for a long time. They can vote in their grocery store. A lot of people vote because of it. It works. I like it. Longer voting hours, Election Day a holiday. These both sound like wonderful things.
Mr. Belcher?
The state and the government exists to serve the people, not the other way around. They are there to accommodate our needs. So I believe if there is a need for folks, and based on the work schedules that some folks have, that is necessary for those changes to be made, in particular extending of hours, I believe we should make every effort to accommodate that, because every single vote counts. And I would like to know why, if folks that are working for a living have a hard time getting there by a certain time, I would like why meaningful reason. I think the vote should count and that we should do it.
Mr. Griffith?
Thank you. Representative Sorolis actually wrote legislation about this to extend earlier voting. Of course, we didn't get the support that we needed. I've been advocating for this as well too. We already have absentee ballot, and you have to swear an affidavit as to why you're doing this. Why do we have to do that? Why can't we just allow people to do that? I think it's very prohibitive. First of all, 6 to 6 is antiquated. We look at national elections when they happen, and the states go to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. You know, we need to move out of that time frame. The internet has showed us the world doesn't stop at 6 o'clock at night, so we can extend that. But I'd also like to say that I believe that the 6 to 6 time period hurts most women because of the jobs that women have, skilled care professionals who work with children, who work in healthcare, and who work in nursing. They're affected by that most, and they can't necessarily leave a patient, even though they're required to be able to do that by their employer. They can't necessarily leave a child unattended. So it's a very, very difficult thing to tell a woman she can't vote. I think I absolutely support earlier voting and extended hours.
And Ms. Henry?
Yeah, I think I'm in concurrence with everyone up here that extended hours are vitally important for those of us who work. And I appreciate Jason talking about working mothers because it is quite a struggle dropping the kids off school, getting to work, coming back home, picking them up from whatever extracurricular activity, and then getting on. Now the advantage of having been a state employee, they give you 4 hours, certainly comp time to be able to do that, but not everybody does. And so it would be interesting to talk again. We talk about these wonderful ideas of voting, but ultimately working with the county clerks to understand what kind of unfunded mandate we may be talking about with them. Everything comes with a price tag, folks. You ask for extended hours, you ask for a national or state holiday, what's the dollar figure? Because someone's going to have to come up with that difference. And if that's going to be the Secretary of State, if there's a way to do that, then we should be ready to help, and the legislature should be there ready to help as well.
Thank you. We're going to do one more question kind of broadly on elections. I'm going to give you all 1 minute, and we're going to start with Mr. Belcher. What can you in your office do to stop people from using social media to spread false information that impacts elections?
What I would like to say on that topic is there is a lot of concern out there about election systems being targeted by foreign governments. The real target is the decision-making cycle of the American vote. And social media is a vital part of that, whether we like it or not, it's a vital part of that. And so I think it's the job of the chief election official of the state to educate the public about the nature of the threats and about what the tech companies are doing about it themselves. But that has changed, by the way, quite a bit just in the past year. There's a lot of changes going on that they're making that may not be well known to the public and who are using social media. So when folks give consent by using the system, do you actually know what it is you're consenting to when you use those platforms such as Facebook? That would be the approach I would take to the rest of the 6 seconds.
Mr. Griffith?
Thanks. I have a software company, and one of the things that we always overcome is how do we disseminate the data that we have out there, and how do we attract the right people in? And unfortunately, Facebook and others, well, especially Facebook, allows that data free. You can look on their analytics and that sort of thing, and you can target exactly who you're looking for. Now, I will give Facebook mad props after the 2016 election, not before. There were numerous websites around the world, mostly in other countries, that had completely false stories, and people picked up on this. Since then, Facebook has integrated a different way to scrub those news articles by requiring candidates, and I'm sure everybody up here who's sponsored ads, have to go through a verification process to be an American citizen by 1, showing your state driver's license, and then 2, by having that letter mailed to your American address here in the United States and verifying it through that way. Those are the type of things that we need to do to ensure that what is out there is accurate and it's not adversely affecting our electorate.
Ms. Henry?
Yeah, I concur that there have been protocols and procedures put in place as of lately since the last 2016 election, especially with Facebook and Instagram. And when we start talking about foreign targeted political ads, certainly. But when we talk about credible information going out on social media, so this is an unpoliced area, right? And my daughters who are 15 and 17, we have a daily conversation about what we put as persons out on social media, and you have to be accountable for what you put out. You know, it's hard when you watch things that are lies about each one of us or other people or other candidates, and you know what, it's tough, and you have to have thick skin. But, you know, as far as policing, that's a huge dynamic problem with the internet. How do you do that? And it's going to be very tough, and it's up to those individual institutions like Facebook to institute their own policies and procedures, and I do applaud them for taking some steps forward, but I think they need to do more.
Mr. Sylvester.
Well, I've noticed everywhere I go that a lot of people have concerns about low information voters and fake news, and they always mean each other. So, at the end of the day, the Secretary of State is beholden to the U.S. Constitution, the Kentucky Constitution, both of which absolutely defend free speech and free press. I do not and will not have the power to tell other people what to share. However, in my role as a sort of citizen elected reporter for our Commonwealth, I will be producing an enormous amount of authoritative, believable, trustworthy information that one can only hope will drive out the bad news, drive out the lies and the false news by giving people trustworthy information direct from a trustworthy source.
All right, thank you. We are going to transition into some of the other duties of the Secretary of State's office. And we're going to direct this question first to Mr. Griffith. This is a question from the audience, from someone who is way smarter than me, so I'm going to look forward to the answer. What do you think about the concept of corporate personhood, and how does that inform your understanding of the office of Secretary of State? That sounds like a 2-minute question to me.
It sounds like a very long question, and it has a lot to do with Citizens United, with the Supreme Court, and I will go on record right now and say that that particular decision by the High Court was wrong. I have a hard time believing that a corporation is a person and should be entitled to the rights of human beings. I'm a business owner myself and don't expect my business to be held as a human individual. As Secretary of State, I'm going to work vigorously with Secretaries of State around the country, as well as with the Attorney General's office, to work toward targeting corporations that use dark money to influence our elections. Many of those corporations get away with doing that by funneling money through super PACs. The amount of that right now, they're not even sure. There is no way to accurately measure how much money is coming through super PACs to influence our elections. It's going to take a broad-based effort to make this happen. It's not something that Kentucky can simply do itself. It's like you've got a hole in the dam over here, and you put your finger in it, and then another one pops up over here and over here. And I think it will take a concentrated effort on all Secretaries of State within the association, as well as the Attorney Generals, to make that go away. It's not going to happen quickly. It's going to have to be at the forefront of everything we do.
Thank you very much. We might have shorted you on time just a little bit there. We have changed out timekeepers on the fly, as you may have noticed. Not to alarm anyone. Here we go. We're about to change back out. Ms. Henry.
Well, I honestly will say I'm not sure I have much to add to the corporate personhood, other than that's a very interesting discussion. I know from the Secretary of State's perspective, what we're responsible for is protecting the businesses and corporations and nonprofits that file with the offices, over 250,000 in the state, that we're responsible for their records, certainly. And one of the discussions nationwide is about business identity theft and making sure that we as Secretary of States are policing that. In fact, not enough Secretary of States are proving that they're tracking that identity theft, and that goes cross-state and interstate. And I think that as Secretary of State, I would like to join the National Association of Secretary of States and really strongly advocate against business identity theft.
Mr. Sylvester.
Well, first I'd like to say that I have come to a much more nuanced understanding of the Citizens United decision. I'm going to disagree with my colleagues just a little bit here, because I actually sat down and read CU the other night. I never had before because I was so upset about it. Why would I read it? If I read the decision, it's like the terrorists would. Well, I actually sat down and I read it, and there's a whole lot in there that's actually going to be very useful to the left once we get over it and we start reading it. There's a whole lot in it that can be used for our side. I'm not going to say it's a good decision or a bad decision. I'm just going to say it's a much more complicated decision than people realize. Now, specifically how it affects the Secretary of State's office is that the Secretary of State is the personification of communication between large abstract entities, such as the governor's office, the legislature, the citizenry, corporations. These abstract entities all come to the elected representative of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And what the Secretary of State does is they communicate, they record, and they report. The existence of the Secretary of State's office is, in fact, an implicit admission that corporate personhood does, in a sense, exist, that we can make binding decisions as groups. The specific decision, Citizens United, is about where money begins and where it ends. And I think we do need to visit this more. I think the fact that the Citizens United decision offended so many of us on the emotional level shows that we felt that the government let us down in its mandate to defend us and our individual atomic rights. So I think it has to be revisited on that score, but the idea that we can make decisions as a group and that we can spend money as a group is going to be hard to get out of there. Thank you.
Great, Mr. Belcher.
When I heard the question, my first thought was, implicit in that question is another. Do I support a constitutional amendment to overturn that decision? And my answer to that is absolutely. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. The last two I worked for were pretty big, and I can tell you firsthand, they're not people. They're not persons in any sense of the word. I think it's not only an application of the law, but the reason itself to declare otherwise. Even though it's affixed with the seal of the Supreme Court and on a piece of paper, that doesn't make it true. However, under our system of government, we've only got two options: another Supreme Court decision or an amendment. And I would absolutely support the result of that. And I'll save us some time and just stop there.
All right, thank you. We're going to go straight into our next question, and we're going to start with Ms. Henry. We're going to go straight into the business services part of the Secretary of State's responsibilities. We're going to give each candidate 2 minutes to tell us how the Secretary of State can improve the business environment in the Commonwealth, both for existing Kentucky companies and those who might want to relocate here. Ms. Henry, 2 minutes.
Well, certainly I think the Secretary of State's office is vital to any of us who own a business or who have started a business. We sort of begin there with our article of incorporation and our bylaws, and the one-stop portal has been wonderful to streamline a lot of information, certainly. But as a small business owner, I had some challenges in other things that I would have liked to have been added there. You know, we had a business where we needed domestic and international shipping, and it took me 3 years for my business to understand all of those dynamics, and I really would have liked some help, and I sought out information online on our Kentucky state government, and there really wasn't anything there. So I would like to see us partner even better with the task force. I know that there's always some joint forces already with economic development and other cabinets, but I think that that could be much stronger, especially for small businesses, which are really the foundation of Kentucky's economy. I also know that from leading the Rosemary Clooney Museum in Augusta, we're a small rural area, and what does Kentucky do to bring in businesses, not only for larger municipalities like Louisville and Lexington and Bowling Green, places that have such a strong workforce, but what can we do for those more rural communities to bring business there? You know, we have to reach outside of the state for tourism groups to make sure we get bus tours in there, to make sure that we are seen as a top-tier community. And again, you know, your environment. So you have environmental issues that are huge, and I know here in Louisville we're doing all we can along Floyd's Fork to make sure that we are preserving land. And the Parklands is a wonderful way when you want to show off a community, you take them to one of the Parklands parks. And you know, exercise and outdoor activities are big for corporations. They want their employee base to be happy. They want them to be able to thrive economically. Certainly, I think that's vitally important. And we also, in one of our nursing homes, one of our biggest issues was employee turnover. So it's interesting, the dynamic and the different types of businesses. When you talk about Eastern Kentucky with our Eastern Kentucky Veteran Nursing Home, we have little to no turnover because that is one of the only jobs there. But in a larger city, we had 100% turnover. So again, viable, skilled jobs and the labor force are important.
Thank you. That is, we are 10 questions, 11 questions in, and this is my first time warning. So that is pretty impressive, but just ask everybody to try to stay to it. Mr. Sebesta, 2 minutes.
Well, one of my lower cost initiatives was to have people go out into colleges, high schools, continuing education centers that actually help people incorporate and fill out the paperwork and become 501c3 nonprofit organizations. I feel that is one of the major bars, especially for poor people, to capital acquisition. Now, if we do this, and this is not an expensive mandate, we're essentially talking about just a traveling high school class where you actually go and help people fill out this paperwork for the first time themselves. The Secretary of State should not be keeping this information to itself. The Secretary of State should be going out into the community and helping people incorporate. Now, this helps everyone in the state because this will be a tremendous boon to small businesses who have the paperwork burden of working in America right now is daunting. You need help. You need someone on your side. This will attract small investors and small entrepreneurs to Kentucky. Will be known as the state where you can come to the state and they will actually help you incorporate. This will actually bring an enormous number of the brightest and young people in America to us. The reason I want to do this is because it's the right thing to do. But this would absolutely have the effect of solidifying capital acquisition for the lower classes. And I think that is the foundation of our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
How many people know that red tape is actually a living organism? Because if you cut it, it will grow back. So cut the red tape is the answer to how we make this a real friendly business climate. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right next door, at least where I live, in Eastern Kentucky, right next door, Virginia, the state of Virginia has a government streamlining committee. And their purpose is to look at three things: tax code, licensing regulations, and networking and training. Because those are the things that small businesses said they wanted worked on the most to improve the business climate in their state. I think we can do the same thing. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. I would lead a similar initiative here in Kentucky. Involve members of the business community, ask them for their feedback, identify things that they want changed, and then go to legislators and say, look at this is what we've heard from the business community. These are changes we'd like to see legislated, and that would help improve the business climate. If I'm under time, I will save some more time at the end of this.
All right, Mr. Griffith.
Here we go again. Thank you very much. As Heather mentioned earlier, the one-step website portal for the Secretary of State's office is a significant step forward. Those of us that looked at when they were on that years ago, there are so many functions on it. But let me just say that I believe that there are ways that even the website can be updated, and that is no disrespect to anybody who's helped develop that. But I believe that modules or plugins can definitely be helped on that website that or chat engines, so that somebody who has a question of registering a business or one of the other services can be done. Because we have a growing number of people who are bilingual speakers, who speak Spanish first, that may not be able to communicate verbally, but can type better or chat better with text. So I think that if we had something like that in place, it would definitely help that growing population of Spanish-speaking persons. But I'd also like to say that as Secretary of State, we can create different forums around the state. We could do this with conferences and that sort of thing and get feedback through surveys and real people who are driving what's happening with business in our Commonwealth. And also advocate for the reduction in the yearly tax that's assessed to the Secretary of State's office. I call that the Ernie Fletcher tax. It's $175 a year for mom and pop businesses that are trying to struggle to make ends meet. I know that because I was one of those people for 3 years that did not turn a profit. And after the third year, my wife said, you have 12 months. If you cannot get this to market, like, that's it, I'm cutting you off. So, and we did. But for some businesses, that's just too much. But also, I'd like to say, as Secretary of State, we can work with the Office of Tourism. We can also work with the Kentucky Film Office to create materials to promote business outside of the Commonwealth as well as inside. These materials can be used in trade shows and forums and conferences to promote business. And the Secretary of State's office can also help with SOAR. I'm a member of SOAR. EK7, other community-based partnerships to develop organizations to help attract outside money and bring it into the Commonwealth and train our citizens at the same time for a skill job.
Thank you. We are getting close to wrapping up here. I wanted to do one question from the audience here. Because I'm struck by just how collegial all of you have been throughout this event. So nonetheless, we're going to use one question from the audience. We're going to ask you the Clinton-Trump question from the debate. And since you've all been on the road sort of together here for a while, we're going to give you each 1 minute to say one nice thing about each of your opponents. 1 minute total. So we're going to start with Mr. Sylvester.
I want more than a minute. Okay, I got to pick my favorite thing. Mr. Griffith, I'm deeply moved by the way that you are phrasing your run as a chance to be around your son. Your son loves you, and that means a lot to me. I'm a big fan of everyone on the stage. I've seen them all more than I've seen my own family lately. They're good people, they're serious, they know what they're doing. I'm very moved by Mr. Belcher's clear confidence. I'm moved by Mr. Griffith's vision, and I always learn something every time I talk to him. And Ms. Henry's dedication to service is everywhere in her life. I mean, you can't fake that. She's the real thing.
All right, Mr. Belcher.
It's actually an easy question. And somewhere in this, I think there's a question about who's most qualified, so we'll get to that one later. But everyone's qualified, but each one of us have unique strengths. And so right next to me is a teacher, and I would imagine someone with teaching experience is something that a lot of people say in Kentucky right now, given the things that are going on. I'll just go down the road and their seat. Ms. Henry is a former Miss America. There's a certain amount of star power with that. That's certainly a skill and an asset that can be leveraged in the political campaign very effectively. And what I like about Mr. Smith's approach is I think of all of us, he can most credibly claim to have been a vocal critic of our own party. And we tend to focus only on the other side, but we have to police ourselves too. And I think all four of us, we can't match in that respect. So thanks.
All right, Mr. Griffith.
All right, I'll start with my right. First of all, I didn't know Jason. I think it's safe to say that the four of us didn't know each other 5 or 6 months ago, or at least not on a personal level, face-to-face, name to name. But after meeting Jason, I admire his leadership with his serving our country. I think it says an awful lot about somebody who goes and puts their life on the line to serve our country, for the defense of our freedoms. And he's a very articulate speaker with wonderful vision for things that can happen. Ms. Henry, former Commissioner Henry, if I can say that, has a golden heart. And I was taken back last week when we met nationally. I thought, here she is, she's going to rip me up. And I didn't mean it that way. It was just unbelievable, the charisma that came out of her voice when actually getting to speak to her for a little bit. So, oh, you're timing me. Oh, okay, I didn't realize I was being timed on this. And she has a golden heart to help our nation's veterans, and I respect it so much. And Jeff has probably one of the most kindest hearts of a human being I've ever met. There was recently, well, let's just say that he has moved me on a couple of different occasions. Thank you.
Ms. Henry.
Well, I will tell you, after the KUT Forum specifically, I realized that we all share a lot of the same views. There is some diversity in that, but I appreciate the fact that we had a conversation, because really to make things work in government, it should be about a conversation, and any one of us would be great for you in that role of Secretary of State. For Jason Belcher, obviously, you know, I'm a veterans advocate, so I appreciate his service to our country. It means more to me than most things, certainly in my life. And to Jason Griffith, I certainly appreciate the fortitude. I'll never forget after you announced, I think you had a chicken dinner, a fried chicken dinner or something like that. I mean, I just thought, what a brilliant idea. And the fact that you're a teacher, you know, I'm a product of public school education, so as Steve, his mom was a teacher. The number 2 person to sign my filing papers was my 2nd grade teacher, Miss Dorothy, and it really means a lot to me. I think you've earned sainthood. And for Jeff over here, Mr. Sylvester, what a delight. Every time that I'm around him, and because we go in alphabetical order, he's sort of my seat buddy, and it is just, he makes me laugh, and he has wonderful ideas, and I gotta tell you, you have a great slate for Secretary of State on the Democratic Party.
Thank you very much. So now that you've all talked about everyone else on the panel, we're going to let you talk about why you're even better, or perhaps more qualified, as Mr. Belcher said. So we're going to give you each 2 minutes for a closing statement, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Belcher.
I just want to thank everyone again for your time. I know coming out here during the week on work week is a commitment for you, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. My street is leadership in crisis. 2020, if you have any doubts about that, that's going to be a contentious election. It's not the most contentious so far in our history. I think probably all see head nodding. We probably agree that's going to be start to finish the life we're going to work kind of service. And I would think you would want someone in the seat there who has experience under pressure. I have the privilege of leading some of the finest people in the world under combat conditions in Iraq. I've also done crisis management in the corporate sector as well. We helped with employee safety in Cairo, Egypt during the fall of the Mubarak regime. So the crisis is an old trend of mine, and what I learned from that is how to keep level-headed, how to make effective decisions under pressure, and to not let the pressure of the situation dictate which choice The Secretary of State's office is a leader, is a constitutional officer, and I believe my business experience also are my greatest things that I will bring to that role. And I love the state of Kentucky. I was born and raised here. I have a passion for the state. Just like serving my country, I look forward to the opportunity to serve the state of Kentucky if you give me that opportunity. So I would ask for your vote on May 21st, and thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith.
Thank you. In closing, I'd like to mention again that my name is Jason Griffith, and I have to say this because this is a Jason too. Naila over there always says, "Hey, JG," and our other people on our team says JG for you and me. But I always usually tell my kids just to call me G because they have a hard time with it. But I always have to tell people it's like Andy Griffith, not Merv Griffith, the TV show. All right, in all seriousness though, I value that we have 8 concerned people who chose to stick their neck out of the line and to be held to public scrutiny. We have 4 of them up here, and then obviously 4 Republicans. And I think it's a remarkable thing that half of those 8 are Democrats, and we're seated in front of you tonight for public scrutiny. On the basics, most of us are in agreement on just about everything. But the difference, I think, lies in how they're prioritized and emphasized, and whether or not there's a plan for execution in place. So it's really important that you, as concerned and informed citizens, take the time to ask questions and look at the nuances that differentiate us. As you decide who you're voting on, I ask you to do that. And reach out to the candidates. You know, you're meeting people up here for the first time you probably not met before. That said, you won't find a harder working candidate in this race than me. This is my 137th race, or 137th event that I've been to. I have traveled 3,300 miles in 11 days. I ruined one car's transmission. I had to buy another one because a deer hit it in Estill County. And I don't do that as lip service. I do it to earn your vote. It's not something I'm going to get easily, and I have to believe that I'm going to have to go and see every single Kentuckian because that's what's important to me, and that's how we gain that trust and respect in government back. When I get sworn in as the next Kentucky Secretary of State, I'm going to bring that same energy, passion, drive, work ethic, and winning desire to that job that you see in front of me on my campaign now. And I will prove to you every day that voting for me was the right choice. I will be as transparent in office as I am in my campaign as a candidate, and I expect you to hold me accountable every step of the way. Once again, I humbly, respectfully ask for your vote on May 21st. Thank you.
Ms. Henry.
Well, you know, it's very interesting when we talk about experiencing government. And again, as I said in my opening, for 20 years, I have been working with local, state, and federal government. And that all plays into that part in leading a statewide office and being able to fundamentally answer to the challenges of budgets, of legislative policy, of leading a staff, handling personnel, being able to navigate the protocols and procedures of state government. Each office has its own nuances, but having that experience is priceless because when you talk about transitions, and I've been a part of 2 transitions, it is never easy. So you have to learn how to go in with a conservative approach and assess the situation as it is, but also understand that there is some urgency. As I said before, you go into November, you're going to get sworn into office in January. You're going to have to do a quick assessment of what has been done, what legacy is before you, although we know a lot, but we won't know until we get into that budget session what has been done and laid before us, and making projections for the future, creating a strategic plan for the next 4 years that not only is, I know it's a partisan office, but I think we all feel like that it needs to be run in a nonpartisan way because every Kentuckian's vote should count, every Kentucky business should certainly count, and all of our services are out there for individuals regardless of your political party. And I have shown through 2 different administrations specifically that I can navigate that process. I can actually provide you references for people on both sides of the aisle that can attest to the credibility of my leadership and my message. When I bring up an issue, I am well known for being a serious issue. When Heather speaks up, it's time to probably listen because it's going to be a valid concern, certainly. And I will tell you, if you take away my face, you take away my name, you take away the fact that I was ever Miss America, which paid for my college education, I just want y'all to know that. But above and beyond that, and if you take away my female gender, if you looked at my resume, my experience in government, my leadership and my service, I certainly would be a very well qualified candidate for Secretary of State. So I would appreciate your vote on May 21st.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Sebesta.
Thank you very much, and thank you for listening today. I suppose this is my closing statement, so I'm not going to get to tell you all what happened in Shelbyville yesterday, which is too bad. It was really interesting. But I am not the most qualified candidate. We're all qualified. good people. We would all do a good job. If you pick me, what you get is I will do what I say. I have a tremendous sense of fun. It's going to be fun. I will make it entertaining for y'all. And you can trust me to go up there and put my money where my mouth is. I stick to it. So if you want money out of politics, y'all, this is what it looks like. I don't think I can top that. So thank you so much for listening today, and thank you for coming out to see us.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of the candidates. I will agree with Ms. Henry that we do have a tremendous slate of candidates in this primary. So thank you again for being part of this event, and thank you to the audience for being here tonight. And that'll conclude our event.
Wrap up our evening with a big thank you to our moderator, Bill Shorey, our timekeeper, David James. We did draw our 50-50 split of live numbers. You and the moderator draw on there, George? All right.
Now, I am very well qualified for this, okay? There you go.
The winning numbers on the red ticket are 871082. 871082. $42 to win. The news treasurer won. Imagine that. All right, folks. Thank you very much for coming out. We'll be here again May 15th. The next month's spring meeting. Good.
Alright, got a good angle.
No, you should be there.
They try to argue with each other a little bit. It's more absurd.
Thanks for coming out to see us.
Okay, my turn. Ready? Sorry. That's okay. Should I get Bill numbers? Oh, yeah. Bill, come on, come here. Yeah, he's the president of the club. Okay, let's forward see. No, get the center. Forward center, Bill. Get in the middle. Everybody,
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah. That's why I haven't seen
Hey man, do you want to tell the viewers how they can follow your campaign?
Caught you by surprise.
I know, I was like, oh, I didn't.
Well, the thing is, I've been talking about it. I've been asking them about it. I've been carefully asking them about it. Sort of. So nobody was really confident.
All of you guys seem to be very well prepared.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I had my phone with me, I would have read it. Like, we were all too angry to read it, but when you actually read it, there's a lot in there that there's a lot in there.
I know, right?
All right, guys. Thanks for joining me here, Louisville ProActivist Report. We are the local independent show that gets out in the community. So, if you like more of this content, like and share this video, like and share politics and stuff on Facebook. And I'll be back on live Monday night. I've got a really cool show for you. I believe that'll be at 5 o'clock. I'll set up an event for that, so check that out. In the meantime, my name is Rolf. Thank you for watching. Always, always, always think critically.